story about Nicodemus is about a person who's struggling with life. Some people call it midlife crisis. Some people call it growing old. Some people call it aging. Some people call it just soul searching. But I'm guessing that we've all probably experienced that in one way or another. We've all experienced that one way or another. I mean, have you ever had that feeling in life? You know, life's not bad. Life's good. But you know, something inside is just longing for something more. Ever have that? What was that like? Or maybe you're in it. It still goes on. It still goes on, right? Sometimes I'll hear people say, I just want to feel a little more alive. Right? But I will tell you, none of us are dead yet, okay? None of us are dead yet. Okay? I mean, I know we've had tragedies and deaths, and I don't want to minimize those. But for us sitting here, anyone here without a pulse? And this is for Charlie, because I know he's gonna do this to me this afternoon. Right? Anybody who's not living is already dying. Right? Anybody who's not living is already dying. And I bet you can't guess who said that. Bobby Zimmerman, Hibbing, Minnesota, born in Duluth. Sometimes known as. But I just wonder if Nicodemus, and this story of Nicodemus going in the middle of the night, is just so intrigued by something that Jesus has, something that is so life-giving. And he's just intrigued by it. And he's afraid. He's afraid because he's a Pharisee, he's a leader in a community, and he knows that Jesus is saying something that has some truth, and yet he knows that it's just creating all kinds of trouble in the community because the truth is speaking to powers that have been corrupted. And so he knows, my goodness, I'm a leader of the community. Here's somebody speaking truth. Where do I meet him? How do I get to know this sense of life better? Because he's got something. He's got something. And so, what's the safest way to do this?
Hide in the darkness.
Hide in the darkness. Meet at night. Right? Hide in the darkness and meet at night. And it's fascinating because if you look at the name Nicodemus, at least in the Greek form of the name, it means conqueror of the people. Right? I'm not sure what the Hebrew roots are. I didn't get a chance to look that up. But in the Greek roots, because Nicodemus is certainly a translation, a Greek name translated probably from some Hebrew name or Aramaic name. I don't really know. But as it was translated into the Greek, it became conqueror of the people. Here's somebody who's got power with the people, at least in his name, and he's got to meet at night because he's afraid. He's afraid of some greater power. And what do you know about that in your own lives when you just realize there's a power that's just a little bit bigger, that wants to move me a little bit beyond? What do you know about that?
We approach it cautiously because we don't want to lose what we've already got. There's some risk involved.
Yeah, there's some risk involved because you've got security. And then it's like, whoa. Change means change. Yeah. And so that happens, right? And it's funny because Nicodemus only appears 2 other times in John's Gospel. He appears now here with Jesus at night. Later he will be named as one of those who at the temple when Jesus was being tried and being questioned before his crucifixion, Nicodemus stepped forward as one arguing that Jesus should have due process. Habeas corpus. Due process. Jesus should have due process. And Nicodemus argued that in the temple. The last time you see a mention of Nicodemus is in chapter 19, and he's bringing in hundreds of pounds of spices to the tomb, is the way it's put. Aloes and spices, myrrh and aloes. And he's bringing this to the tomb. I mean, That's a lot of spice. And it's like, who is this Nicodemus? And what was, I mean, I have no idea what somebody was doing bringing that kind of quantity of spices. But it wasn't just to weigh him down and say, we're going to make sure you're dead. And I don't want to see you again because you created so much trouble. Or was it just this idea of, let our prayers rise like incense before you, and let them be a lot of prayer? I mean, it's hard to say, because Nicodemus is never defined as a disciple. He's just a person of interest. And there's an interesting book out right now called Bystanders. And it talks about our nature. It's just saying, I don't want to get involved, I'll just be a bystander. I won't really talk about systemic change, I'll just be a bystander. Even though I might believe it, I'll just be a bystander. I'll just kind of see what happens. So maybe Nicodemus was a bystander. Maybe the story of John is about to us when we have the temptations to just be bystanders with our faith. When we are wondering whether we still have a pulse or not. And believe me, I mean, I don't know, maybe Melinda and Shelley can help us here. How do you go about feeling your pulse and knowing you're alive? Because we are alive. We are alive. And that's where Jesus' story goes to Nicodemus, right? It is a call. It is a call to the people of God. It is a call to each and every one of us. And Nicodemus was pious. Nicodemus was faithful. Nicodemus was a teacher of Israel. He was a Pharisee. So he was following the food codes. By all standards, we say he was a good person. Nicodemus was a good person, and yet even he himself knew he was missing something. We can all be good people. And we can all be bystanders. But what does it mean to say, I'm longing for something more, Jesus, and tell me about what that is and how I get it in my life? How do I go about getting that in my life? And Jesus says it's like the wind. Right? The Spirit is like the wind. You don't know where it comes from, where it goes, but you know it when you feel it. You know it when you feel it. How can you be a teacher of Israel? How can you be a bystander and not see the power of the breath of God in these words? And how can that not just blow through you like a Maine nor'easter? Do you know when you're standing in a nor'easter? Well, Jesus is simply saying, you want to understand the Spirit? You want to understand the voice and the power of God? Stand in a Maine nor'easter. It feels like that. It cuts through you. So what is it about God that cuts through you, breathes through you today? Because it's interesting. The Spirit, the word is pneuma. The word is pneuma there. Means air. We have pneumatic tires, air, breath. It could be translated. It can be translated as spirit. It can be translated as wind. But pneuma, we have pneumonia, that which affects our air and our lungs. That's the Greek word, pneuma, right? So what does it feel like for you to have the breath of God, the wind of God, the air of God, the Spirit of God penetrating you like a nor'easter?
I feel precious.
That's a moment that I feel precious.
Yeah.
That when I really understand the breath of God, that goes back to baptism, by the way. The breath of God blows onto Jesus, and that night the Spirit of God comes within him.
I feel peace and that everything is happening the way it should be.
There's a great sense of peace when the breath of God is blowing through us. I mean, it's a great prayerful meditation. I don't know if you ever pray like this, but it's just to concentrate on your breath. Because if we really talk about the breath of God as the ruach, the breath, the spirit, the wind of God, think about each time you take a breath. What does it mean when you breathe in?
You take in.
You take in, and what do we take in?
Oxygen.
We take in oxygen, and where does it go? It goes into the bloodstream, and the blood carries it to what? Eventually, through the heart. The heart's pumping it so that it goes, but eventually that oxygen goes to every single cell in our bodies. And how many cells do we have? I have no clue. Some of us have more than others. I'm going to make a joke, Steve. I'm not going to go there.
The prophet that was read from, he sees God, and he feels this holy terror because this is God. Talking about standing in the nor'easter. So, like, one of the beavers says, Anslin's not a tame lion. There's many feelings.
But it's about being alive. And it's about being alive, about a message of love, about a message of sacrifice, about a message of saying we want to restore all of us to wholeness. And I'm quoting back to that Isaiah phrase. You notice what he says there? But the thing is, breath, he touched me and it was like a fire burning on my lips. And he said to me, all my sins are forgiven. All my sins are